Flashy girl from Flushing, the nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
Miss Fine.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another Oh, Mr. Sheffield podcast episode. That was awkward.
We're rusty, man.
I am Sean DiPasquale here with...
Toria Sheffield.
That's right. No relation to the titular Oh, Mr. Sheffield, who is one of the many characters on The Nanny, a sitcom from the 90s starring Fran Drescher that we are here to talk about. We're in season 2, deep in the weeds of season 2. Episode 10. Now, if you're following along on HBO Max, you're maybe confused because those episodes are still glaringly out of order. So while this is season 2, episode 10 of the show, the episode title is The Whine Cellar. That's what you're looking for. I think it's like episode 9 or 8 on HBO Max. It's all out of whack. Just look for the title. This is The Whine Cellar. This is the bottle episode in which Fran and C.C get trapped in the wine cellar of the Sheffield's mansion.
And it's spelled Whine. So like as in whining, the wine cellar.
The wine cellar. Very clever.
I don't often notice the director. I do, but you're better about that. But I even went back and was like, who directed this one? Because I don't know if you noticed, but there was a couple things that seemed a little odd or off in terms of like camera work. And it was actually our old friend Lee Chalet Chamel. So I was surprised, and I'm not like, it was like weird things where it almost was like, oh, this seemed like their dry run. Like, but then it's what actually seemed to air. Like there's just a little bit of like weird, slow camera work, or like, I don't know, maybe he was getting experimental or trying to mix it up or do something different. But there was a couple scenes that even I, a pretty like unobservant person, was like,
I wonder, a lot of times when there's a new set built for a show, like the first time shooting on that set can be weird, and sitcoms move at a pretty quick clip. So I just wonder if it boils down to like they had this wine cellar set built for this episode. It was ready like right before they were ready to start rehearsing. They did a couple rehearsals and then it was time to shoot. And I mean, it's possible that like the wine cellar production like butted up right up against when they started filming the episode. That certainly can happen in TV production. So I wonder if it's just that, and maybe it was just like getting familiar with the space.
Interesting. Okay. That checks out. Maybe we should have Leon someday. I feel like...
Oh, I would love it. And Gail Mancuso, I've been trying.
Oh, and not only is this the episode where, by the way, Fran and C.C get stuck in the basement or the wine cellar, it's also where they are celebrating Sylvia's surprise, quote unquote, and quote unquote 50th birthday, because it's not actually a surprise and it's not actually her 50th. But that is sort of the impetus for getting everybody in one place and allowing this whole episode to take place like within the Sheffield mansion.
Yeah.
And did you notice the episode also started on a Clinton fat joke of Bill Clinton? And just not Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton. And
that was my first note, is this open with a solid Bill Clinton eats too many hamburgers jokes.
But I go, remember when that used to be the thing people made Bill Clinton jokes about? Like the world changed so much between like 94 and 98. And I think younger people would have no knowledge that like, yeah, the joke used to be that Bill Clinton loved McDonald's and he had like high cholesterol and he was always a little beefy, and that he was always trying to like get into shape.
Dude, people lost the thread of that joke so much that when Trump was president and had like that McDonald's day at the White House and everyone was like, oh, fatty loves McDonald's. Oh, what a loser president. I was like, am I this old that I'm the only person who's like, yeah, that's what? That we did this already. We already had this president. Don't
you remember there was a whole amazing SNL sketch with Phil Hartman, because he used to play Clinton, where the whole entire premise of the sketch was it was Bill Clinton out on a morning jog surrounded by Secret Service, and he insists that he needs to, quote, jog through a McDonald's to talk to his constituents. And the whole sketch is him just going from table to table and stuffing his mouth with whatever he can grab as he walks through this McDonald's. So
yeah, I mean, I remember it fondly, and it was great.
But okay, so
great.
So good. But so the episode starts on that, apropos of nothing, and we quickly find out that that while they are all prepping for Sylvia's big quote unquote 50th birthday, CC and Mr. Sheffield won't be in town. They're going to be out like somewhere in the Hamptons or something, at a dinner party for
Jean Chalet.
Jean Chalet's house. Yes.
Yeah. Do you know who that is? Did you get that reference?
I didn't get that reference, so I had to Google it.
Okay.
Which maybe predates me a little. Maybe that's why.
It does. It does. So he was incredibly well known, because he was a TV critic. So he was constantly on TV, on the news, giving his opinion, but he had this like gigantic bushy mustache and crazy wild hair. And like, he was like a character. He was like, hey, it's me, Jean Chalet. Like, he was a character. I mean, he was like it was like the easy butt of a joke kind of character because of how like ridiculous he let his facial hair get. It was like an easy parody.
But clearly someone who's kind of like culturally relevant in the New York scene. I could even, I could pick that up on context clues, but there was this line where CC is,
he was on the Today Show. He was like the main film reviewer on the Today Show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Well, but that leads to this great exchange where, CC is so pleased that she and Mr. Sheffield will be sharing this cottage that she says something like, we're sharing a cottage right by the water. And Niles goes, how convenient, sir. Should you want to drown yourself? Which is just a great line. And then, so it's like that. So at this point in the episode, we think that the A plot is Sylvia's 50th, but that later reveals to be something else. But the C plot is that Maggie, as always, is like wondering if there's going to be any cute guys at this party, and she is told to avoid Cousin Irving at all costs. And I have a note where I just went, I'm really tired of Maggie's central personality trait being that she always just wants to meet boys. And it's really,
to be fair, that was the central personality trait of every teenage girl in every sitcom in this time period. That's all they wanted was to meet boys.
I also wrote,
she's arguably just like a less sexed up version of the daughter from Married with Children, who also was the same character. She just wanted to meet boys, only she was like, sexed up heavily. And Maggie is.
I would say Kelly also always wanted money. So she actually had more dimensions. But I also said, this is probably true for a lot of teenagers. Like their number one goal is trying to meet people they're attracted to.
Meet a guy. Yeah, why not?
And so then we go to the next scene, which it's Fran and the kids are getting everything in the house ready for the big party. And Niles catches Fran making sangria with Sweet and Low and Mr. Sheffield's best burgundy.
Yes.
He has no idea why that's like disgusting.
Yeah.
And CC comes in looking for Mr. Sheffield, who's actually already left for like the train station. And she's really upset because she was like, Niles, I literally called and told you that I was coming to meet him here. And you told me that like you would relay the message. And he just flagrantly didn't do it.
He just didn't do it. I think his line is like, oh, I thought it. What does he say? He said, oh, I thought you told me to give him a massage, which I deemed inappropriate.
Right. He just shirked his duties and tried to make her life hard.
He didn't even try.
But so she's like, well, fine. Like, I'm at least going to go downstairs to the wine cellar to get something to bring to this get together out in the Hamptons. She goes down in the wine cellar and she closes the door behind her. She grabs a bottle of wine. She's literally singing like yippity doodah, like what a wonderful day. She is so excited for this weekend. She pulls the handle on the door and it comes off. So she literally has no way to get out of this wine cellar. And at which point she starts laughing and then maniacally sobbing. She starts looking for another way out just as Fran walks in and lets the door close right behind her.
By the way, how did Lauren Lane, how did Lauren Lane give this lady an Emmy?
Oh,
she's great.
Sean, and we're going to talk about the next episode today too, because we're doing a double feature Sunday record. It only gets better. I'm actually loving
so good. I know. She's so good.
Yeah, no, I have literally a whole thing about that when we get to the next episode where I'm just she's just really found the stride of this character, and she's getting better every week. So then, Fran and C.C, who, as we know, maybe not enemies, but definitely two people who are always at odds with each other, are locked in a basement together with no windows and no way out. And C.C. at one point even says, this used to be a bomb shelter. Nobody can hear us scream. And meanwhile, Fran is completely missing her mom's surprise party upstairs. And C.C. is, of course, going to miss the train to this wonderful weekend she's ecstatic for. And this was this hilarious moment where Fran starts to hyperventilate. She claims she is getting a recovered memory of the Lohmans' dressing room. And she's like, naked women everywhere, all old, dimples, none of them on the face. and the thing is, so I have this note where I don't know if a lot of people under a certain age or maybe even not from the East Coast know what Lohmans is.
I didn't know what this reference was.
Oh, okay. So every woman in my family would die laughing because Lohmans, I think it was a Jewish owned large retail store. I have to double check that, but it was basically kind of like the Marshalls or the TJ Maxx type thing where it's nice things at a discount. But the thing specifically about Lohmans is that the dressing rooms were communal, which means you had to get undressed in front of every other woman in the dressing room. And sometimes there could be 25 women back there. And it was very much a hot spot for older Jewish women. So if you were like me and you were brought there as a kid while your mom was running errands,
it was older Jewish women the whole time.
Just looking, you were fully dressed and just your mom takes you by the hand into this space, and you've never seen so many naked bodies in your life, and certainly not elderly naked bodies. And it is an experience. But then I think Lohmans went out of business maybe about 10 years ago, and it was devastating for all of these sort of East Coast Jewish women who that's their favorite place. That
reminds me, I feel like the male equivalent of that is the first time your grandfather takes you for a schwitz at the club.
Oh, what's a schwitz? Is that a shave?
No, it's like a sauna. It's a sweat. Schwitz is sweating in the sauna. So it was we'll go to the gym and then we'll go for a schwitz in the sauna. And I was like, that sounds fun. And then it's fucking just 10 old ass naked men just yeah, I'm sweating out the poisons.
It's so gross.
It's so gross.
So God, you know what? Hey, God willing, God willing, we both grow to be that old and gross. You know what I mean?
I can't wait.
But so they're down in the cell. Oh,
this episode confirms C.C. and Mr. Sheffield have never had sex.
Oh, I have that exact note. I go. This officially confirms they have never done anything physical.
So did I. And then I wrote. It kind of makes everything CeCe's ever said and done very, very sad.
I know. But she says at one point, my therapist says I'm obsessed with him.
Yes.
But the thing is, but before we even get there, we established that they're stuck down there, and while Fran's doing her Lohmans meltdown, C.C. slaps her across the face. Yes. And then shortly thereafter, Fran slaps C.C. across the face. And I just wrote, you know what? A Fran and C.C. spinoff is the only one that would work, is what I've decided. And so it's they're stuck down there. We then, the rest of the episode is literally just jumping back upstairs to what's happening at this surprise party and then back downstairs.
And really barely, I feel like they just used it to pass time because there's really no plot happening upstairs. We do get a cameo from Fran Drescher's actual father, Mort. He shows up as Uncle Stanley, who is like this hilarious character who I hope comes back more often. And then I love the scam that Brighton and Yetta are pulling.
Yeah. So yeah, basically up at the party. Now it's in full swing. And because it's Sylvia's birthday, her, Grandma Yetta is there, but Grandma Yetta she just grabs Brighton and is like, follow my lead. She goes up to like the first old guy she can see and is like, oh, like, Morty or whoever, not Morty, like, oh, like Marty, here's, little Shmooey. He's about to be bar mitzvahed, but you're going to be on your cruise. And so this older relative like instantly hands over cash. And then Yetta takes Brighton aside and goes, we split it 50-50. And so they're clearly going to scam this whole party by just claiming that he's little Shmooey, he's grown up and he's about to be bar mitzvahed. And actually that's a callback to the episode where she stayed with them, where she thought his name was Shmooey.
Yes. It's great. It's great. There's a couple of callbacks in this episode. They also, so in the A plot, there's a couple of fun things that happen. First of all, and I'll save the bulk of this rant for our segments, but Fran brings up other sitcom tropes in this episode, which just goes to further prove how self-aware the writers that are making this show are, which I think just further disproves any claims of these writers like stealing from something and not just knowingly homaging what had come before. I think like the line in this episode about, oh, this is just like on Facts of Life when blah, blah, blah. Like, I think it just shows how self-aware the writers were, and they knew they were writing a sitcom, and every once in a while they had fun with the idea of playing with those sitcom tropes, which is why I think we get episodes sometimes that feel like 3 different sitcom tropes all thrown into one episode. Because I think these writers were just having fun. I
totally agree. So that is happening upstairs. And then we jump back down to Fran and C.C, where Fran basically says that she needs to de-stress. And the way that she de-stresses is by doing people's hair, which, cuts to this like just great little comedic beat where, C.C.'s basically like relents because she can't deal with Fran babbling anymore. And she's like, fine, you can do my hair. Bless you. And so Fran starts to tease Cece's hair while in much as many people do when they're actually getting their hair done, she just starts to like spill a lot of her innermost feelings and thoughts to Fran. And Fran has like very seamlessly transitioned to like hairdresser mode. And also C.C has been drinking wine from the cellar, which also contributes to, I think, her like willingness to talk. And then, we bounce back upstairs for a beat again. And then when we go back downstairs, this is a great comedic beat. C.C.'s hair is literally 10 times bigger than it not only is, but also ever actually could be with the amount of hair she has.
It's a great beat. It's just such a, like, clearly it was like like, let's find the most ridiculous Fran-like wig and slap it on CC. And it was so, I mean, the reveal shot opens with them just sitting and letting the audience laugh at it for like a good minute.
It is an impossibly huge wig that is, in the world of the show, just what Fran has done with a comb.
Yeah. It's great.
And, CC looks completely despondent because now Fran has gone on to just listing flavors of Baskin Robbins ice creams. Like, that's how bored they are.
And she comes to the conclusion that there's only 30 flavors and there's not 31.
Oh, yeah. I actually have that as one of my favorite lines because when she thinks that she has discovered that, her shock is so genuine.
Yeah.
And the betrayal is so genuine.
Yeah.
She goes, only 30?
But
why would they lie?
But it's not like she could have possibly just missed one. She's sure she's gotten all 30 and there's not a possible other one and they're liars. I loved that joke.
Why would they lie? Made me laugh out loud.
Yeah, it was very funny.
And so in this kind of very funny way, in a way where I again was like, oh, I really love these actresses, like their comedic dynamic together. Cece is now like getting pretty drunk and in a very like almost juvenile, childlike way is like, let's play truth or dare. And Fran's like, but all your truths are so boring, which was just such a like subtle line that I thought was actually like very, very funny. And this is when, of course, Fran's like, okay, like if you could be with any man, who would it be? Because she knows that C.C. like basically just wants an excuse to talk about Mr. Sheffield more. And this is where she's like, oh, Maxwell, and she, just pines for him and talks about how I think she talks about how she loves his streak of gray in his hair. And Fran's like, oh, that's the first thing I'd change. It reminds me of Pepe Le Pew. And then Mr. Sheffield essentially comes home and is like, Cece's missing. And Niles says, well, actually, it's the reverse. He comes home and Niles says, Fran is missing. And then Mr. Sheffield goes, that's strange. So is Miss Babcock. And then Niles yells, yippee! And at which point Mr. Sheffield goes looking around and he finds them in the wine cellar. And that's like basically the end of the episode. So like, it's not huge in moving the plot forward. It's just a fun, relatively inexpensive episode. Although I guess they did have to build that wine cellar.
I mean, I do think that, like, I don't know if it pushes anything forward, but it does cement, I think, it starts to cement things that, like, maybe they were ambiguous on up until now. Certainly, like they have had a discussion between season 1 and season 2 of, like, what is the nature of Cece's actual relationship with Mr. Sheffield. And I think we get a big info dump on that in this episode. Because I do think it's been super ambiguous if they've, like, screwed each other or not, and like this confirms they definitely have not had physical relationship at all. She's just like a crazy lady pining away after this guy who's clearly like not interested in her like that. Do you well, I guess we could get into this in segments, because that's basically it. And then there's a great post-credit scene where Grandma Yetta lectures Brighton on his privilege and then steals his money, which I thought was great.
That's in my favorite lines and moments too.
I love it. All right, well, so then let's get into segments. And now segments.
So segments.
Yeah, no, I think we should move on to segments.
We can move on to our segments.
And now segments.
With Sean and Toria.
Okay, before we start, I gotta ask you. Like, I don't know if this is part of segments or if this is, I don't know what this is. Does this episode pass the Bechdel test?
Is it Bechdel? I think it's Bechdel. And I think you always confuse me because you say Bechdel. It's Bechdel.
Is it
and
Bechdel? Is it not
Bechdel?
Does it because of the nature of how much they talk about Mr. Sheffield alone? I feel like it's because it's literally, that's the test, isn't it? You put two female characters in a room, and if they can have a conversation about something that isn't one of the male characters, then like it passes. And like,
it's a little more than that. There's like three things. It's like, is there more than one named female character? Do they have a conversation with each other? And is it about something other than a man in the story? And I would say, I mean, there's definitely some jokes that pass it, because at one point, like early on in their being trapped together, CC yells something like, "We are officially putting a ban on any conversation about Eastern European relatives with moles, foot disorders." And then she like lists something else kind of gross. And Fran's like, "Well, you're really limiting the conversation." So it's like, we established that Fran was for a while at least talking about a lot of other stuff.
Right.
But we don't actually necessarily see it.
True. Yeah, true.
And then in terms of favorite lines, one of my favorites was at the beginning so one thing that we kind of just breezed over is that they do a dry run of this surprise party, and because Sylvia wants to do a rehearsal of it, even though it's supposed to be her party. And when she's there at the house, she turns to Mr. Sheffield and she's like, thank you so much for letting us have the party here. We only have one turlet. and all of Morty's brothers are coming. Around this toilet turlet, and it just really made me laugh. I already said we kind of went over a lot of these. I really liked it when C.C. says, "Let's play truth or dare," and Frank says, "But all your truths are so boring." And then the thing that you mentioned about Yetta and Brighton and the button, it's basically Yetta is divvying up the money they scammed from the party, and she's like, "All right, you get 80, I get 135." And he's like, "Hey, that's not fair." And she's like, "You want to talk not fair? How about you live in a mansion, I live in a home. You have your whole life ahead of you. I have 2 weeks tops." And I really liked it.
I loved it so much. I agree. Yeah, I mean, I think that was my favorite line. We should also note there's a callback to the shower walk-in episode or plot, I guess, that happens. There's when they're talking about, CC and Fran are talking about Mr. Sheffield, and CC says, like, "I've seen him in his bathing suit. Have you?" And then she's like, "No, I haven't." And then she's like, "Although I did see him naked." And she's like, "What?" And then she's like, "Yeah, I walked in him on the shower." And then CC's like, looks like, "Ooh, maybe I should do that." And then Fran goes, "Nah, he keeps it locked now." As if she's tried again.
It's lines like that are some of my absolute, tonally my absolute favorite from the show.
Same.
So, any other favorite moments or lines?
No, that's Yiddish? It. Let's close up the favorite lines back.
Okay, so going once, going twice, and so. I didn't clock any Yiddish in this episode. I don't know if you did, but I thought it would be a fun opportunity to discuss Manischewitz, which, this is a wine.
Okay.
Wine. Well, just a lot of people might have heard.
I couldn't make the connection at first, but I get it. Wine cellar, Manischewitz. Yeah. Let's talk about it.
The impetus of this episode is they get stuck in a wine cellar. And so maybe some people are aware of this if they are not Jewish, and maybe some people have never heard of it. I don't really know, but Manischewitz is it's technically a whole kosher brand, but it's kind of just used casually to refer specifically to the wine that they make, and it is an extremely sweet, sugary wine that basically tastes like grape juice. And most families will buy it at Passover. But then when I was reading about it, I don't know if you knew this, it said however, Manischewitz Sweet Concord contains corn syrup, a sweetener derived from corn, which is forbidden during Passover among Ashkenazi Jews. So Manischewitz produced a special Passover bottle for which is sweetened with cane sugar and not corn syrup. And I didn't know this, so I looked it up, and it says during Passover, Ashkenazi Jews traditionally stay away from not only leavened food like bread, but also legumes, rice, seeds, and corn. The ban has been in place since the 13th century, but it's always been controversial.
It's very controversial. Because why can't you have some corn? That's ridiculous.
I don't know. I got to read up on it. I mean,
we only ever bought Manischewitz at Passover, so I'm pretty sure we've only ever had the kosher for Passover Manischewitz. The company was started by a rabbi, by the way, Rabbi Manischewitz, in 1888, which is a long ass time ago.
But so also, this is often sort of like a Jewish kid's first taste of alcohol ever is the Manischewitz.
Yes.
And, it's pretty common. And then in terms of nanny trivia for the week, so I was looking up the writers for this episode on IMDb when I was looking into who directed it. Mm-hmm. And I happened to see that, so this was written by Robert Sternin, Prudence Fraser, and Peter Mark Jacobson. Mm. I just happened to be scrolling through, I think, Robert Sternin's page, and it said that he had worked, after The Nanny, he worked on a show called Dadi, D-A-D-I, which ran for 60 episodes. And I was like, oh, that's weird. How have I not heard of a show that ran for probably like 3 seasons? And then I saw that Prudence Fraser also worked on it. And then I found out that we've never heard of it because Dottie was the Turkish remake of The Nanny. And you know how in an earlier episode, we discussed it. In this show aired in Italy, but it was just dubbed with the same actors. This is completely new actors, but everything else is exactly the same. And it takes place in Istanbul instead of Manhattan. And like when you look it up, like even the font of the title Dottie is the same as The Nanny. And so listed as creators on Dottie are Robert Stern and Prudence Fraser, Peter Mark Jacobson, and Fran Drescher. So I wonder if they made a lot of money kind of repackaging this concept for other markets. I hope so.
That's pretty awesome. I want to, man, maybe this show has legs, Toria. Maybe we can squeeze another 60 episodes out of this by watching Dottie.
And see like how close is it like, you know, like the Psycho remake with
right, like how close does it compare? Like are the episodes I can't find any plot breakdowns. I read it is exactly the same. Oh, I think I even looked for plot breakdowns too. Right. Now that's pretty cool.
Fran or the C.C.
Well, I wanted to talk about something real quick before we move on to Fran or C.C.
Okay.
We have to have another serious discussion, everybody, about IMDb and what it's being used for, and the kind of trivia and facts and goofs that are being called out. So this week, someone has added as a character error that Fran is too stupid to know what adenoids are, yet here she uses and this is a direct quote, yet here she uses the fancy word like she'd gone to Yale.
Adenoids? Who is this? Is it the same person as last time or is it a different person?
It doesn't tell you who it is. But then in parentheses, they wrote, there's recurring jokes and gags as to her inherent stupidity and lack of education. These are regularly made. And it's like, first of all, recurring and regularly made, those are the same thing, buddy. You don't have to say that. If you say recurring, that's what that fucking means. Second, I don't think that even with all of the jokes about her being, I wouldn't even call it stupid.
She's not formally educated, but Fran is not stupid. In fact, she's usually the smartest person in the room.
Right.
It's like you have such a fundamental misunderstanding of what you're watching. If that is your takeaway, but also she had her tonsils out in a previous episode where they talked about her adenoids.
So, thank you. Yeah, and also the word adenoids, I hate to break it to you, not a fancy Yale word. It's just a word of. It's like it's the only word really for that part of your body.
I'm going to say this person is projecting.
Oh my God.
This person must feel a lot of intellectual inadequacy in his or her own life and is really being channeled to Fran right now.
I only bring this stuff up because I don't want our fans going to IMDb to look up their favorite show and then being like, oh, there's an error in this episode. There's no error. There's no error in this episode. The other error listed is that CC does not have nearly enough volume nor length to her hair to make that bouffant do Fran allegedly gave her. And it's like, yeah, that's the joke. That's just the joke. That's not a character error. That's the joke.
But as I've said last time, in the end, honestly, I feel like there is some karma to this because if these people, like, how joyless must their lives be if this is the lens through which they see the world? Like, our day-to-day is so much better because they clearly can laugh at nothing. They don't even understand basic, just basic
continuity
premises.
Gaffes. Yeah, it's like, this is not a continuity gaffe. They're very aware of what they're... Anyway, I don't know, man. That's not an error. Neither one of those things are errors. So I just say use IMDb with caution. Always cautiously pessimistic. All right. So who's the Fran and who's the CC this week?
I would probably make the best of it like Fran, But I always say this, I relate to CC sometimes more than I want to. Like, I do feel like sometimes when I get so excited about something always happens to stop it from happening, to the point where like sometimes when I'm really looking forward to something, I like I just don't let myself get excited, because I'm like, well, if I get excited, then it's not going to happen. But if I don't really care, then it will happen. Like it's like a whole layer of like neuroses.
Same. I do that the worst with work stuff. Like I'll get a thing and Elizabeth will be like, oh my God, that's so amazing, baby. And I'm like, literally nothing has happened, Elizabeth. Like someone offered a thing. And then I'll like sign a contract and get the first paycheck. And she'll be like, is it good now? And I'm like, I mean, it's good in the sense that like I got paid, but also like, it's all just fine. Like if we get too excited, it'll end.
Yes.
And that's why what we do makes us the extra sad boys. All right. Well, I think we have a lot to think about, and I might be too depressed to record another episode ever again.
Yeah, I'm just going to go grab a drink real fast. It's 10 a.m.? That's late enough, right?
It's perfect. It's perfect. All right. Follow the podcast. Mr. Chef Pod. That's with 2 F's and the word pod. On Instagram and on Twitter. Please leave a 5-star review and a comment and subscribe on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, as it's now called, because that super helps people find the show and more people will listen to it. And
come join us in the
just come join us. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Mr. Sheffield Pod.
Yeah, that's the place. That's the place to be. We check both accounts, both of us. We're always jumping at you with something. All right. And that's a week. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
The Flushing girl from Flushing, the nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
Miss Fine.